Anyway, it's great to be here. Before I get into my talk, I just want to tell like a fun personal story just for you to get to know me. Any basketball fans in the audience here? I think there were a few from conversations I had with some folks last night. Sorry, I'm not a hockey fan, so I don't have a hockey story to tell you guys. But I'll tell you a basketball story. So I live in San Francisco. The basketball team there is the Golden State Warriors, who have been among the most successful basketball teams of the last decade. This year, not so much. It was a tough year for them, but overall they've been good. And one of their players, Andrew Wiggins, is actually from Canada. So thank you for that. He helped us win the championship a couple years ago. But the Warriors, in addition to being a great basketball team, they also get customer experience really well. And one of the things they do, and I've been lucky enough to go to a few games, and one of the things they do for a handful of games a year, they invite kids onto the court after the game, and they have this whole thing where they bring the kids onto the court, and every kid that attends can get one free throw after the game on the court. It's a really cool experience. The kids line up to shoot free throws. So I was at a game last year with my daughter, who's an avid basketball player, and she was excited about this opportunity to shoot a free throw on the Golden State Warriors floor, right? So we'll take a look in a second at her free throw attempt. The thing is, though, the week before we went to that game, she was in a free throw competition with school, right? And she's a pretty good free throw shooter, but she got spooked by the moment, and she had 25 free throw attempts, and she missed every single one and actually only hit the rim once, right? So which is a pretty devastating moment for her, right? Because she can actually make free throws. So now a week later, we're in a different environment. We're here on the floor of the Warriors, and I'm nervous about it, right? I just want her, like, I'm not expecting her to make it. I just want her to hit the rim. I don't want her to be upset about it. So let's see what happens here. So it's in slow motion. She's up to the line dribbling, puts it up. Hit the rim, please. Oh, okay, hit the rim, great, right? So we hit the rim. I'm happy. Look at her face. She's happy to hit the rim. I'll take that, but wait. Oh, look at that. And it comes back down through the basket. And again, only one shot, like an incredible moment. So again, why did I tell you that story? One, my daughter insists that she's in every presentation that I give, so I have to work her in there. Secondly, you got to know me a little bit, but then third, to just show you the power of the human element of a great story, right? I could have come up here and told you all the stats for my daughter's basketball season, and you wouldn't remember that, but you'll probably remember her making this shot there. So there's a learning that we can take for customer experience. Because if you think about the customer experience space, we've got all kinds of great tools and technologies that have come out over the last 10 years, and then obviously in the last year or so with AI that we just heard about from Dre. And so what we have access to between the tools, the metrics, CX has really taken off as a discipline more so now than ever before, right? And because of these analytics, because of these metrics, because of our ability to take large volumes of customer data and really analyze it, CX matters because it can be measured, because it can be analyzed. If you're in CX, you've got a seat at the table that you didn't have 10 years ago. The problem, though, is as far as CX has come, it still doesn't carry the same weight as traditional operations metrics in a corporate environment, right? So if you think about like a call center environment, ops metrics like solves per day or ticket handle time, they tend to carry more weight than customer experience metrics like NPS or CSAT. In a digital environment, click-through rate or traffic, that seems to always matter more than the user experience metrics. So again, some of this is beyond the control of CX departments, but some of this imbalance is actually self-inflicted by CX professionals. So what do I mean by that? When I say it's self-inflicted, I'm referring to something that I've observed from a number of CX departments over the last 10 years, and it's what I call the metric-centric trap. Right, so I talked about how CX metrics are great and they've given us a seat at the table, but they're also a double-edged sword because they're the very thing that if you overemphasize on them, you can lose sight of why you're measuring CX in the first place. You can lose sight of the customer. So here's an example of a table that got shared in executive business reviews every month at Airbnb. And a lot of companies have similar tables like this, right? You can see a number of different metrics on here. Some of these my team owned, and they're tracked and trended over time. And every business review with the executives, the first thing we would do is we put this table up there, and then we would talk about each of the metrics, right? And these are customer experience metrics, but what was happening was we were like reducing customers to data points and numbers on a slide. When I was at eBay, we created similar charts. So here's another version. It's maybe a little bit more visually appealing, certainly more colorful, but it's really the same thing. Is there anything in here that inspires? It's just a bunch of trends and numbers and charts, and nothing in here that inspires teams to take action on the customer feedback. The thing is, though, my respective teams at Airbnb and eBay, we spent a ton of time producing a lot of charts like this. Like it was just the amount of time we spent creating these charts was insane. And then we did it because the meetings we were in were highly visible. Like we got to go in front of senior executives and present these charts, present the numbers, because that's what they wanted to see. And it gave us like a sense of importance. But we were doing nothing to advance the actual experience for the customers by doing it. So I want to give you another example of the metric-centric trap and how it can drive unproductive work. But first, let's admire this waterfall here. Anyone recognize this? Know where this is? I heard. What did you say? Someone's. Oh yeah, good job. It is in Iceland. Yeah. This is the Skagafoss waterfall in southwest Iceland. So Iceland's got a lot of great waterfalls, a lot of natural beauty. I'm a big fan of waterfalls. I love the natural beauty. I love the power. I just love everything about it. You're probably wondering where I'm going with this. But you know who else is a big fan of waterfalls? Metric-centric organizations love waterfalls. Except their waterfalls are not as pretty as the ones in Iceland. Okay, so as an ex-consultant myself, I'm very familiar with waterfall charts like this. So for those of you that might not be, they're common in sales and finance. And basically what you do is you see where you are currently, where do you want to go to, and then you have like steps along the way to get to your goal. And they're useful in certain settings. Where they're not useful is in the world of customer experience, specifically when you're looking at CX metrics that are derived from surveys, right? But a lot of companies try to do that, right? So a lot of companies that I've advised, that I've worked with, will measure the customer experience. We'll use metrics like Net Promoter Score to measure it, and then we'll set goals and say, hey, we've got a score of 40, we got to get to 50, and then we're going to assign points along the way to each of those. And again, it might work in certain settings, but the problem with customer experience where you're getting your output from the customer, from their feedback, from surveys, it doesn't work because the customer experience is influenced by a lot of different things, and it's hard to say this particular team can actually drive 3 points of a survey-based score. And then what happens is you set goals like this, and then teams tend to argue about it, right? So what happens here is you can see like Team A got a 4-point goal, but Team C got an 8-point goal. But Team A will say, hey, or Team C will say, hey, we got the 8-point goal, but Team A is doing something that's impacting our part of the experience. So why do they only have a 4-point goal? Why do we have an 8-point goal? And just the conversations you're having, literally, I've seen this happen with senior executives. You're having the dumbest conversations arguing about 1 or 2-point goals, and you're actually missing the bigger picture that, hey, we got to improve the overall customer experience, right? So it's a great example of the metric-centric trap driving the wrong type of effort and the wrong type of conversations. So again, why does all of this happen? A big reason is the allure of targets and metrics, right? So again, if you are in customer experience, if you own a metric like CSAT or NPS or whatever, you matter, right? And so the target's a shiny object that you don't want to give up, and you want to just keep doing the things that make you important. But what the problem is over time is that target becomes a burden, right? It defines your existence, it defines your importance, and as a result, you keep doing the same thing over and over again. So the monthly or quarterly target becomes your primary goal, and then you spend so much time doing what I just talked about, trying to justify these 1 or 2-point movements, and then the customer suffers as a result. So how do you break out of this trap, right? It's difficult, and it's tough. It requires a commitment to a new approach. It requires a willingness to be bold, to step out of your comfort zone, right? Because if your executives say, hey, I want to see these charts and trends, like it's hard to tell people, like, hey, I'm not going to show you that. I'm going to show you something else, right? So you got to be bold. You got to move off of the easy work, but you also got to balance it in a way where you're still supporting the needs of your stakeholders. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cover off on a few tactics that have worked for me at both eBay and Airbnb in terms of how to bring the customer to life and get out of this metric-centric trap. So the first thing to do, and this is hard, but you want to reduce your emphasis on trending historical scores. So again, I understand you can't get rid of completely like trending, but what you can do is show the trends that matter and then move towards more of a storytelling approach in terms of the deliverables that you put out there. So we did this at eBay. So remember that colorful slide that I showed a few slides back? It was crazy. That slide was one of 50 slides that looked just like it. So my team produced 50 of those slides every quarter, because what we would do is we would have that slide that showed the key trends, but then we would break it down by region, by customer segment, by all kinds of other things and individual teams. And it was a 50-page slide that was our biggest deliverable every quarter. So what I did was I said, hey, we're going to stop doing that. We're not going to do a 50-page PowerPoint deck anymore that's just numbers and charts. What you're going to get 4 to 5 slides a quarter. We're going to show you what matters. So if something significant happened, we will show the trend, it will explain it, but we're not going to spend a lot of time trying to dissect 1 or 2 point movements in the score. What we are going to do then, we're going to shift our focus of what we're doing. Instead of the trending, we're going to meet individually with each of the teams that consume these reports, and we'll find out what's important to you. We'll find out what initiatives you're working on, and then what we're going to do is we'll do some custom insights reports specifically for your initiatives and tell you what the customer thinks about it and how the customer experience influences it. So again, no more trending of scores over time, but we're going to do custom insights that tie to your initiatives that bring both quantitative and qualitative feedback together. And we aligned them with key corporate initiatives, so we got buy-in to do that and get away from the trending. At Airbnb, we're starting to do that now as well. So every monthly report now includes a case study diving into a key topic in addition to just the overall trending of scores. So you're asking, how do we bring the customer to life? How do you tell a story? A key way to do that, and which we discovered, is to create empathy by bringing the customer to life. And we did this by adding a video component to our Voice of Customer program. So what we did was, like, the way our program works is we send surveys to customers after interactions with Airbnb and after interactions with customer support. What we did was we included an option where, after the customer took the first question of the survey, the likely to recommend question, instead of just asking them to tell us why, we gave them the option, if they wanted to leave a video response, right? So the thinking was that will actually bring the customer to life. And the timing now with video becoming more prevalent, people are more comfortable leaving video responses. We thought we could get richer and better feedback by doing it. So again, we didn't know what to expect by it. But let me give you an example of, I want to show you the very first video we got. This is crazy. The first video response we got from a customer is pretty powerful.
Mohammed was very nice. I was hospitalized 3 days ago with an infection in my leg. I had to cancel my trip for my grandkid's birthday. So I'm very grateful that he was able to cancel my reservation and return my money. I will most likely be using your services again very shortly. Thank you.
So if you think about it, he gave us a video response from his hospital bed. Like he was lying down in a hospital bed. Imagine, just think about that. Like if you read a text response that said the same thing, it wouldn't be as powerful, right? The fact that he's lying in the hospital bed, he's struggling to speak, he's hooked into some equipment. There's so many visual cues that creates empathy for that situation that you wouldn't get if you just read a text response. And he certainly didn't feel like a data point, right? So we were actually wondering, are people going to do this? Are people going to leave us video feedback? And then the first guy does it from a hospital bed. So I'm like, okay, people are going to do this, right? So, and we're going to get powerful feedback from it. Let me show you one more. This other one's probably a little bit less inspiring, but it's worth watching.
So I don't even know where to begin. So I contacted Airbnb because 2 weeks before our Hawaiian vacation, the owner, who I had just spoken to via message, canceled, and he didn't mention it at all, canceled our house from him. And he said it was because he sold the property. Well, now we were going to pay something like $2,000 for the week at this house. And the only thing available, because he didn't give us any notice, the only thing available is something at $5,000. So we've literally had, because we have no other choice, to double our cost. So we've had to cancel activities because we can't afford it. So now we have to pay for where we're staying. And the best that Airbnb could do was a $200 coupon. And there wasn't even anything available on Airbnb. I had to go to VRBO. So that $200 coupon did us no good whatsoever. And Louisa, or whatever her name was, I couldn't understand her most of the conversation. It sounded like she was underwater. I even asked her several times to please call me back, and she wouldn't do it. So no, I will not recommend it. I'm extremely upset, and I'm not going to let this matter die.
All right. So how does that one make you feel? Probably not as good, right? So again, probably you guys are audience. You're probably mad about it. I was mad about it. Imagine what our executives felt like when I put that in front of them, right? Kind of makes you want to help this person out, right? So again, what happened was her reservation was canceled last minute. Her vacation was ruined, and we didn't help her out really. And so. So it was a common issue, right? So Airbnb is a marketplace, right? We don't control what happens. We just connect guests and hosts, right? And then sometimes things happen, and a host will cancel on the guest last minute, and then the guest comes to us to make things right. Our solution for the longest time was, okay, if a host gets canceled on, if a guest gets canceled on last minute, we'll give the guest a full refund. And then a 10% coupon to accommodate them, right? And our leadership team thought, oh, that should be great. They're getting a full refund. They're even getting something addition and beyond. Like, they should be happy. But what they didn't realize is, okay, like, it's not just the reservation, right? Like if you can't find something like at the same price, it's going to be a lot more than the cost of your reservation. You've got flights, you've got other stuff, right? She was out $5,000. We gave her $200, right? Which is a joke, right? In our old metric-centric world before we had video, like, nobody would read these comments, right? And then we just had a ticket topic called host-initiated cancellation last minute, right? And it had a lower score than other things. But again, all we focused on was that score, and we said, okay, hey, this ticket topic is low. Let's do something about it. But then when you get videos like this and you show the real human reaction and you show someone complaining about their vacation is ruined, and this is one of many that we got. I had people in tears, like people yelling, using profanity. There's all kinds of stuff. Like, when I put that in front of the people in charge of our policies, they were like, oh, we need to do something about this. This is actually a big pain point. And so this kind of brought issues to light, and it allowed me to start having some conversations about, hey, we need to change this policy, which had been a long-term pain point for a while, but until we had video and we're putting it in front of people, nobody really cared to do anything about it. The thing is, though, empathy by itself isn't enough to drive structural change, right? It might drive some one-off action, right? So with that lady, we took care of her. But then to actually make the case to go change policies, you have to combine the empathy from the video with the data, right? So I talk about balancing the head and the heart, like on the seesaw here, right? So you need to balance both of them. So those videos got the leaders inspired to do something about it. But in order to prioritize and get this policy change, I had to go make a business case as well, right? So we did some analysis. We looked at how many reservations were being canceled within 72 hours of check-in, right? And I can't share the number with you, but I will say that it's not a small number, right? So a lot of our customers were impacted by this. And then I looked at our survey feedback after people had this happen to them. And you heard her say, I'm never using Airbnb again. I was able to use some text analytics to figure out the number of people that were likely to not rebook with us again due to that issue. And then we did some analysis to say, hey, here's the dollar amount that's at risk if we don't fix it, right? So now I'm appealing to the head, I'm appealing to the finance people, but then the video is appealing to the people that care about the customer from that perspective. So the combination of all of that together, we were actually able to make a case, hey, we need to go prioritize something. So a couple years ago, we actually launched a program called Air Cover, which does protect guests in this situation. If a guest is canceled on last minute by a host, the company will step in and make things right for them. It doesn't go as far as I'd like it to. I think it should go further, but it is a step in the right direction. And we accomplish that because we use the power of bringing the customer to life with video, with the analysis and that sort of thing as well. Another key learning from this program is that it can pay off eventually to just continue to be the squeaky wheel and talking about stuff, right? So if you represent the customer perspective and are bringing customer feedback to people on a regular basis, it's important, right? You're the voice of the customer in your company, and it's important that you continue to say the same thing over and over again, even if you feel like nothing's happening, right? And that was a mindset that I had, that I continued with the video, where I would share negative videos, I would share pain points, and then sometimes things wouldn't happen. I wouldn't let that discourage me, right? I would continue to say the same thing over and over again, because you never know when the right piece of content is going to be consumed by somebody that might do something about it, right? So it's easy to get frustrated. You shouldn't be, right? So one of the things that I started doing with video was we would add a video of the week to my week. So our team would send out a weekly update with just the scores for what was happening that week. But then we added the video of the week, and the video of the week was connected to some key issue that I wanted people to watch. And so one week, I wasn't happy with the number of people that were watching the video from the previous week, so I added this note to the video of the week, right? So if you can't read it, it says, like, take the time to watch it. If you can't spare 3.5 minutes to watch it, pick it up right here. It's only 40 seconds. Like, you owe it to your customers to watch this video if you can't do it, right? And that was kind of a bold tactic, because this newsletter goes out to senior executives in the company, right? So they could be like, who the hell is this guy telling us to do this, right? But I'm telling them, hey, you've got to take the time to do it. So what was funny is that I did get more people to watch the video this week, but it wasn't enough as I expected. I thought there'd be more, and I have the ability to see who watches the video, right? So I knew certain leaders didn't watch the video. So I followed up the next week and I said, hey, this week you're not getting a new video, because I know some of you didn't watch last week's video. You know who you are. Please watch last week's video, and then I'll send you a new one next week. And a lot more people watch the video, right? So it's bold. It's challenging people to care about the customer, but it drove action. Another tactic is to really just be bold and tell people, hey, like, we've got customers at risk, right? So there was a stretch in 2020 after the pandemic. Some of our policies regarding cancellations were causing a lot of customers to say, hey, I'm never using you guys again, right? So I said, hey, let's make that into a metric, right? So then what I did was I said, hey, here's a tidbit of the week. Last week was the X consecutive week that at least this many customers told us they were never using us again. And over this time period, this number of customers said they were leaving, right? And again, I'm not going to share the numbers, but they're big numbers, and that got people's attention, right? So again, it's a bold tactic to just, and what it does, it appeals to the metric-centric folks, right? So you're going to have people that respond to empathy, respond to videos, but then again, you're going to have more data-oriented people that want the data behind it. So here's your data point. Like this many customers are going to leave us. Let's go do something about this. And then the other thing we did was we started actively showcasing recordings of customer service calls in deliverables, right? So there's nothing more powerful than an executive sitting and listening to a bad customer support call that's gone terrible, right? So we did these things called call listening sessions, where we would bring a bunch of leaders into a room, we would pick a topic to talk about, and then we'd play a call recording of a call that went bad through no fault of the agents. Like, it was no fault of the agent, it was mainly due to our policies, and we showed how painful it was for those customers to go through those processes. And doing that, again, was another way to create empathy and get people to really have that customer first mindset. Okay, the other thing, so we talked about video, we talked about creating empathy, we talked about being the squeaky wheel. The other thing to help find that balance between the metrics focus and the people focus is to look for those win-win stories that actually impact both the customer experience and the operations metrics. So an example of this was another customer pain point that occurred in 2021. So Airbnb gives out like coupons and travel vouchers to customers for a variety of reasons, right? I mentioned if a customer gets canceled on, they'll get a travel voucher to use. Our super hosts get one once a year. There's other ways people can have these coupons that they can use at different times. But these coupons are set to expire after a year, right? So if you don't use them within a year, they go away and you can't use them. So in 2021, like travel was starting to come back after the pandemic, but there were still a lot of people that didn't use their coupons that year, right? So what happened was at the end of 21, we were getting a lot of calls into our call center from customers asking if they could extend their coupons because they hadn't used them the previous year. Now, we had no mechanism. So one, the coupons expire, so there's no product mechanism for an agent to extend a coupon, and our agents weren't given any guidance on what to do. So what they would say was, hey, I'm sorry, we can't extend the coupons. So how do you think our customers reacted to that? You can read this comment. So yeah, I mean, a host that does $30,000 in revenue for us, and we're not going to extend a $150 coupon. I mean, that's ridiculous, right? My team identified this was an issue that we needed to go fix. But what we did was we said, okay, hey, a lot of customers are pissed off about us. Like, this should be a no-brainer. One, these coupons don't cost us any money, so we should be able to just extend the coupons, right? So like one, it's the right thing to do for our loyal customers from a customer experience perspective, but it also makes sense from an operations perspective, right? Because what I did was I went to our operations folks and I said, hey, look, if we extend coupons, auto-extend them for people that are expiring, like we're getting like this many calls per month about people extending them, right? So we're getting this call volume is going up. It's going to drive our call volume down if we do the right thing and extend the coupons. And then it'll also help the metrics for our agents, right? Because they don't know what to do. They get these calls coming in. They're looking things up. It actually hurts their call handle time and all these other metrics that they cared about. So I made the case from an operations perspective. It's also the right thing to do. So what we did was we put some guidance in place where we told agents, if a customer calls in about this, you automatically extend the coupon, no questions asked. And then I actually made the case for our product team to build some stuff where we actually auto-extended the coupons, right? So it was a win-win because it was the right thing to do from a customer experience perspective, but also the right thing from an operations perspective. So again, it's an example of looking for those win-win stories that impact both things. Okay, one final point I want to talk about is the idea of showcasing positive feedback as a way to highlight the power of great customer experience. So again, I've talked about how I've used a lot of negative videos and a lot of things to go drive changes. And in the CX world, we tend to overfocus on the negative and don't think about the positive. And this actually crystallized for me on a road trip that I was on. So I was taking this trip, I was driving, I was behind this truck. I don't know, in Canada, do you guys do the trucks have the phone numbers and they say, how's my driving? You guys have that too? Okay. So they're pretty common in the US. You see them all the time. I was actually impressed with how this guy was driving. Like he was driving, maybe he was driving safely, but he was also assertive, right? He was like which I appreciate as I'm from the Northeast originally, so I appreciate that. And then also, to be honest, I was kind of bored on this drive, so I said, hey, you know what? Let me go call this number and compliment this guy on his driving, right? So I called the number. This person answers the phone, and then the first thing they say is, "What's the problem you'd like to report?" And I said, oh, no, I actually don't want to report a problem. I want to give this driver a compliment on what he's doing. And this agent just pauses and she's confused. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I said, this guy in front of me, like he's doing a great job. I just want to give him a compliment, give him some positive feedback. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, this is a complaint line. I can't help you. And then I said, okay, well, is there any way that you can figure out a way to just route the feedback to him? I want to make sure he's complimented for how he's doing. And the person said, no, there's nothing I can do. And that was the end of the conversation, right? So that's when it hit me. Then I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm guilty of this too in my own job, right? Like we don't focus enough on positive feedback, right? So like what I told you all the stories I've been sharing, everything I've been sharing with team is negative feedback from customers, but the reality is we do a good job a lot of the time. Our agents do a good job. We don't do enough about sharing positive feedback. So I took this learning from this, and I went back and I said, hey, let's start sharing positive videos. Let's start sharing positive feedback, right? So we started that video of the week. Every now and then I throw a positive video in there. If we got a really positive video about a customer service agent, I would send that video to that agent's manager and say, hey, check this out. Look at the great job this person did. Make sure it gets shared. And they would share it with their teams, right? The other thing I would do is when I wanted to make some of these policy changes that we talked about making, I realized that positive feedback was helpful there too, because I never got approval to go make a full-blown change, right? I always had to pilot something and prove the value of it. So we would pilot something, and then during the pilot, I would use the positive feedback and positive videos if I had them to make the case, hey, this pilot's working, let's continue to build on it, right? So it's important. I think the lesson here is like a lot of people within the CX space forget about the power of positive feedback, and you tend to overfocus on the negative. Okay, so the last thing I want to leave you with is that breaking free of this metric-centric trap I talked about, it's a journey. And it's important to stay focused on the long-term path, right? So I talked earlier about how it's easy to get frustrated if things aren't working your way and you're trying to make change and nobody listens. But it's a slow path, right? And even like big changes are incremental and take time. So don't get frustrated if things aren't changing as quickly as you'd like. On my end, like it took a while for a lot of changes to happen. So it's important to just realize that this is a long and winding road. But then it's important to also embrace those small wins along the way, right? So you're not going to always get everything you want, but embrace the small wins and realize that it's a journey. But if you continue on that path, eventually you can make the experience better for all of your customers. So thank you. You want to do a sit or? Yeah.
We have a few minutes.
Yeah,
why don't we use the chairs that we actually set up for this? Wow, lovely crowd. I guess, thanks a lot, Raj. That was really cool. You did it way better than you did at X4. Just so, that was better.
Well, did you tell them the story about X4, the environment that was in?
Real
quick
man.
story. Yeah, you should. Well, so at X4, it was it was a warehouse, right? So then they had all these different sessions. So how it worked was people were wearing like headphones, and it was like a silent disco thing where people were wearing headphones because there was another group right next to you.
With no wall.
With no wall, yeah. So it was tough for me because I actually like to engage with the crowd. So it was just like not hearing laughter and all that like made it harder. So that was a much tougher environment.
Yeah, and you could actually tune your headphones to a presentation on the other side of you, so you watch one presentation and listen to other ones. So, does anybody have any questions for Raj? Tony, who already saw him speak before, why don't we start with you?
I was wondering if you've ever looked at making a partial case for employee retention and stuff by not having such miserable experiences, so that, when you improve things for the customer, then you're improving it for the customer service rep and helping retention and saving all the costs of onboarding new people.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's definitely something we've done. Obviously, in a call center environment, retention is a big deal. So we've been able to show that, like when we have improved things and made it easier, like if we change a policy where an agent doesn't have to say, hey, sorry, like I can't extend your coupon, that makes their lives easier and like they're happier customers. And then even the point about the positive feedback, right? Like sharing positive feedback on a regular basis actually like increases employee satisfaction and employee retention.
Good question. Who else?
Thanks so much for all the insights. I'm just curious from your personal experience, do you feel the switch from showing like 50 slide deck of charts to doing video and VOC and showing that? Do you feel in terms of a workload management, does that add more workload to your team or the same or less? How is that transition?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say initially it was more, right? Because it's a change, right? So when you're used to just creating 50-page decks every quarter, like you kind of have an autopilot at a point, right, where you just bang it out. But then when you have to learn a new way to do things, there is some just like kind of change management to figure that out. So initially, it was more work, I would say, but eventually, once you figure out that approach and figuring out like how to tell a story in the right way, like people get good at it, and then it's probably the same as it was before, but it's more rewarding, right? Like that's a big piece of it, right? It's like people enjoy going and telling stories and showcasing case studies and what happened with the customer journey more than they say, hey, here's a number on a chart, right? So I think initially it is more, and maybe it is a little bit more even over time, but I think it's the fact that it's more rewarding, like I think keeps people motivated.
Good question.
Yeah, great question.
Well, there's one back there. We have a microphone coming.
Yeah, thanks for the talk. I think you have addressed this, but I'm just curious about your in-pocket responses to when leadership will challenge some of that qualitative data you feedback, because I often hear is this outlier, or sometimes are you cherry picking?
Yeah.
And the fear, right? I think from a leadership level to act on a single experience.
Yeah.
So when you get that reaction, what are some of your go-to responses to help people empathize?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it's something that we kind of proactively address because. So what happens is before we launched the video, before we did that, I'll step back for a second. There's a common thing that happens that maybe all of you have experienced as well, where an upset customer sends an email to the CEO, right, and says and our CEO gets emails all the time, and it could just be a one-off thing, but if an executive gets emailed, all of a sudden it's a fire drill, and then everyone's there trying to solve it. But it could actually be a one-off thing that's not a big issue to address. So I knew that going into this. So what we did was when we changed this approach and started showcasing stuff, because the video and all that stuff was tied into my existing program, my VOC program. I had the data points, right? So I knew I could actually say this particular issue has a lower score across all our customers who answer our surveys, but then I know we did the analysis to know what the big pain points are, and then what I did was then I said, okay, we know what the big pain points are. Now let me search for a video related to that issue, and because the video was tied into our transactional survey. I could go into our platform and say, hey, I need to find a video about this specific issue. And then the videos that I would showcase in those executive meetings were things that I knew were not one-off issues, right? And it actually allowed me to, if I got challenged, which I did, I had the data to back it up. But then I'd also say, look, you guys are already reacting to one-off issues when you get emailed by a customer. I'm showing you something that's affecting 10 times as many customers, and here's a video to prove it.
More questions?
Earlier in your presentation, you talked about how your approach was to align some of the things that you were looking to tackle with corporate values.
Yeah.
If it didn't align to a value or a vision that was, say, set for your strategic year or whatever that looks like for your company, but it was something that as a team or yourself felt strongly about, or you had the data points to support, how did you approach that differently if it wasn't part of maybe the overall vision?
No, these are great questions I'm getting. That's another good one. Yeah, we did. There were things that weren't the last minute cancellation example I talked about, right? That wasn't a key corporate initiative to focus on. But I could see in the data that it was a big pain point. I've experienced it myself, right? We have all these data points. So I think we started with the key initiatives and ensured that we provided stuff to that. But if we saw something that was a big emerging pain point, we weren't afraid to bring that forward as well. But I think that in those cases it did require a little bit more, right? It required we had to do more analysis. We had to vet it with a few places, right? We had to maybe show a few more videos, kind of the whole point about being the squeaky wheel, because something might not have been an initiative. The first time I said, hey, let's go address this, it probably wouldn't get prioritized. But then I come back the next month and say, hey, look, this is still an issue. Come back the next month and say, hey, what are we doing about it? It's still an issue, right? So I think it's when something's not prioritized, the key is that point about being the squeaky wheel and bringing it up over and over again, but then also making sure you've got the right data to back it up.
Thanks.